It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce Dov and Lily Eisen, our very close and dear friends from Beit Vegan. And Dov, your story about being born in the Ural and having survived and having come to Eretz Israel is absolutely incredible, and I'm so grateful that you're going to relate your history of your life. So if you could just give us a glimpse into your family, your mother, and how you managed to survive being born in the Ural.
My story is only from hints that I got from time to time, because my parents, the generation who survived, didn't talk about the war and what happened there. So I didn't know what happened to them. The only thing that I know is that my family was killed, and I don't know about anyone, and I don't have any picture, because the pictures were left there and were burned. So my parents, what they have taken with them is only a rucksack, and the very few things that they can carry from place to place. So I have no pictures and no stories. What I can tell is the story about what happened shortly before and after the war. And it is things that my mother told me, how she saved my life and her life and what happened to us. But she didn't spoke about her family and all those who were lost in the war. So my mother came from Berdychiv. It is a Jewish town. Many Jews in Berdychiv were Hasidim. The population spoke spoke Yiddish, and what was very strange, that the mayor of Berdychiv before the war was a Jew, a Yiddish speaker. And when the Nazis came in to make their invasion to Ukraine, June 41, she succeeded to run away with some people from Berdychiv. Very short time before they bombarded the bridge to run away from Berdychiv. So they got on a train, and they were left to north and arrived to Ural. On the way, my mother pregnant, and I was born in Ural, in a rail station, on November 42. And you have to imagine that in Ural, at this time is so cold, they are coming to up to minus 30 degrees and even more. And she worked there in Ural, what she was asked by the Russians. And later, as the Nazis came more and more to the east, they ran more to the east. So she made a very long way by foot, by train, and they walked a lot, even in snow. She told me that when she ran away with me from Ural, that it was snow up to the knees, and she had to carry me when she held me at the height of her breast and even higher.
And you don't know what happened to your father?
Nothing. She didn't talk, and I didn't ask, because I didn't want to bother her. So they arrived after a very long journey. You can see it in the map. It's thousands of kilometers. And we arrived to Uzbekistan. That is in the...
I want to show, she started in Berdychiv right at June 1941, when the Germans came. It was part of the evacuation of citizens to the east. So she went to the Ural Mountains. There she gave birth, and then all the way to the east to Tashkent, to Uzbekistan.
In Tashkent, there were hundreds of thousands of refugees. And there was hunger, and there was no food. They worked hard in Tashkent. It's a Muslim country, Tashkent, and they call it, this is a city, Tashkent. The name of the country is Uzbekistan, and the name Uzbekistan means, if you translate it, Stan is country and Uzbek is the people who are living. So Uzbekistan means the country of the Uzbekim, and they're very poor people, and not a developed place, and they stayed there up the war finished, and there was a very hard time. Many people died from hunger or for all kinds of illnesses, and my mother told all kinds of things that she tried to keep herself and me to survive.
I want to tell here that when he was a baby and she was on the way, she said that one day she asked the woman to take care of the baby because she had to do something.
It was in Ural.
It was in Ural when the temperature was -40. And she went. When she came back, she saw that this woman left the baby naked. She took his clothes for her baby and she threw him in the snow because she wanted to survive. It was a fight for life. People would kill others in order to stay alive. And this is a story that she told as an example. And later in Uzbekistan, she told me that when he was sick, she had no medicines to take care of him, and he had 40 degrees temperature, fever, so she didn't know what to do. She put him into the water of a river just to make him feel better and to lower his high temperature.
What is interesting, my mother had good relations with a daughter-in-law, and many times when they were together, two women, she told my wife more than she told me.
It's true.
She preferred to tell her. She felt easier to tell it to her than to me. So there are stories that nearly my wife told me about myself. So she was in Tashkent, and then in Tashkent she knew that her husband was killed or passed away, and she married again to a man who was a refugee from Poland, from the area of Lublin. His family also was all executed, and he succeeded to run away to Uzbekistan, and they married. And here is
a photograph that shows his mother, his stepfather, and here is Dov himself as a child.
And how old were you in this
I think
picture?
it was about 4 years.
4 years old.
4 years old.
And Dov,
And maybe it was made, I don't know exactly, because they didn't show it on the photos at the time. Maybe it was made in Chechen even.
and this is
I
the
will tell
original
you
photo.
later.
This is the original photograph.
Yeah, this is original.
And Dov, you didn't know that this wasn't your biological
No,
father?
they didn't talk about it. I heard here or there, but I wasn't sure, and I didn't ask.
This is also a
Yeah.
good story.
So,
This is also a good photograph that tells a good story. People try to make a living. So how could they make a living? They had to sell something and make some money. So his mother was trying to sell some alcohol or spirits, I don't know what. And she was caught. And if they would find that she was really selling alcohol, she would be transferred to Siberia. She said she didn't. So she needed someone to testify for her, and she brought her son. This is a picture that shows how old he was when he came to the judge. And he told the judge that his mother never had alcohol. So she was set free. And she said, "One day you will become a lawyer because you saved me." in Uzbekistan.
So, after the war, there was an agreement between Russia and Poland that the citizens of Poland can come back to Poland. And so they left Uzbekistan and went to Poland. They went to Chechen, north of Poland, because there are many refugees, Jewish refugees, left to Chechen because there they heard that there was an organization that helped Jews to smuggle the border from Russia to the west and to go to countries that they choose to go, but not to stay in Russia. So in Chechen, they were in Chechen for a while, and they succeeded to join the organization that organized this smuggling the border. And it was a big organization. Thousands of people left the places in this. If the Russians called the people who were in the organization, they would straight send them to Siberia because it was illegal. So we left Poland and we arrived to Austria. And in Austria there were DP camps. What's interesting about the DP camps, there were millions of people, refugees in Poland, in Europe after the war. There were refugees that were under the control of the Russians, under control of the American, and under the control of the Germans.
Of the British.
Of the British in Germany. So the Jews asked the Russians to build camps specially for the Jews, because they said they have their special interests, religious interests, and they felt more secure amongst Jews. The Russians disagree to build special camps. They say we don't recognize nations, all the people are the same, and they didn't build.
Communist.
Yeah, as the communist songs. So there was no Jewish DP in the places that were under control of the Russians. The Americans and the British allow the Jews to build up their camps. So in Austria, near Linz, there were many camps, but near the city Linz, there was a very big camp that they used the buildings that were before held by the Germans. And there we were for about a year, more than a year. At this time, they started straight to build up all kinds of organizing the Jews and the cultural life. It's very interesting. People who passed such a difficult time wanted to continue their Jewishness. So they started to build up schools, shuls, and all what is connected to Jewish life. There were many non-religious people, but this was the possibility for them to do. And then arrived volunteers from Israel, volunteering teachers to teach these kids who survived. And they built up schools. And what is interesting is that the school, the orientation was Hebrew. And the orientation is to help the people, to help them later to come to Israel and to be involved in Israeli life. So they built up a school where I learned, and the name of the school was in Atrudat.
I want to show here, these are the children who studied in the first grade. The one with the red point is Dov, and these are his friends from school, and the people behind them are the teachers who were teaching in this school. They were taught in Hebrew, and they were prepared to go to Israel. And I want to show here two two documents,
Original.
documents. One is the certificate that he got at the end of the first grade, and here you have the name of the school, Geula, and the name of the camp, which was called Sherit HaPleta. It means the people who survived, who stayed alive after the Holocaust.
I was about 6 years old.
And this is the second certificate that he got from the school. And what is interesting here is that the stamp is a stamp of the Jewish
National Fund.
National Fund,
Okay.
Keren Kayemet. So everything was done in Hebrew and with Israeli orientation.
In Spelze.
There is something else. In the camp, Dov was taught wrestling, but not alone.
4 years
All
old.
the children were taught how to protect themselves, because a man, one of the people there in the camp said, these children should know how to protect themselves. They won't be victims anymore. So here you can see the first wrestler of the camp.
אז זה עם החבר שלו.
And this is another photograph with one of his friends from the camp. And here you can see Dov and his sister. She was born in Szczecin after her name is Tzila. She's called Cyril after his grandmother. And here you can see them, you can see the barracks behind them and the children in the DP camp waiting for, I would say, Aliyah. It means coming to Israel on Aliyah, and they are still waiting in the camp to get a certificate so that they can come. It was before the State of Israel was founded.
Because under the British mandate.
Under the British mandate, and they were here also, here they were under the American authorities in this camp. The camp in Linz was under the auspices of the American army.
תראי את התמונה משלי, תחזרי לתמונה.
We can show the route, how it went to Linz, and it's amazing how...
Yes, I'll show the route again. Station number 1 is Berdychiv, when the Germans arrived. Then his birth in Ural. Then all the evacuation all the way to the east to Szczecin, and after the war, all the way to the north of Poland, Szczecin, smuggling the border through Czechoslovakia, and coming to Linz in Austria. And after the State of Israel was founded, they went to Trieste and came by boat to Haifa.
And I just want to ask, Dov, to have traveled all this, one needed... How did your mother do it? And your step... They had to travel, they needed
To
tickets
walk,
to go on.
to travel, to walk, and to find the possibility to manage to have food for every day. In the camps, who helped very much was the joint organization. The joint organization was involved in helping the camps, and the people who are living in the camps, they sent clothes and food, and they did it also in those who were under the American and those who were under the British, and I think that the joint helped them to survive among the time, because they were in the camps, they couldn't work. The people of the countries that they came into, that the camps were there, didn't want them to go outside the camps. They wanted them to stay in the camps. So they have a problem how to make a living. So they find all kinds of ways to make their living, but the joint helps them very much.
Yeah, we need to remember that his mother was 7 years as a refugee. She lived as a refugee for 7 years. No home for 7 years until she came to Israel. 5 years during the war, and 2 years as a refugee later, all the way to
3
Austria.
years.
From
45,
45 to 48, 3 years. Yes, they had no home for so many years. Just a rucksack and a few belongings, that's all.
And Dov, if I can ask you, what is your first recollections that you have? The very first recollections that you can remember growing up?
It's a camp.
The DB camp?
Yes, the camp, and this how I started to learn to read. It was very interesting. They wanted us to read, so you take the kids and you wanted to read, and they put honey on the words, on the letters, and we licked the honey to say that the letters are so important for us, more important than the honey. This I remember.
And you remember this?
Yeah, this I remember. And later I remember coming to Israel, the way on the ship. This I remember too, you can see it here. So what I remember is when we arrived near Haifa. It was after the independence. It was October 48. The British left the country on May.
Do you remember when the state was declared? Do you remember when you heard the news that there was a Jewish state?
No. I didn't remember this. But what I remember is that the people started to dance on the ship and to sing when we arrived and saw the Carmel. The mountain Carmel, you can see it far from when you are on the sea, and we saw it, they started to sing, and so we arrived to Haifa and were taken to a camp of newcomers near Hadera, and we lived in tents, and we got food as a military. You got it, this I remember, you got the dishes from aluminium.
Was this called the Mabara?
Okay?
Yes.
This is called the Mabara. And then later we managed with Zeev Eisen, had some family in Haifa, so they helped them to arrive to Haifa, and they found for him a room in a building. So the way that they are doing, and the room was without doors, without windows, because the Arabs left Haifa. And till we come from May up to November, we arrived, all what is worth to take away was taken away. So we came into the place, there was nothing. So we have to put the curtains on the windows. And the same building, you got a room, and another family got a room, and all the toilet, all was shared by us. And there was another family, and another family. So I lived in Haifa, in downtown of Haifa. It was a very poor neighborhood, and most of the people of this neighborhood were people, newcomers, refugees. All of them passed the war. Most of them were remarried because their families were killed and they tried to begin new lives. And there was also newcomers from North Africa, from Morocco, Tunis, a very poor neighborhood. So I lived in this place up to the army, in one room. We were the parents and two kids, two children, and it was there was little space. So my bed was, at the day,
it was an armchair.
So, no, but I can open it. I opened it at night, and at the day it was an armchair, and we lived there, and it was very difficult for them to make a living because they didn't know the language, and they have no
profession.
So it was very difficult to make it. But what's interesting, they try to do all that they can, that the children didn't feel anything. I can say that here, all my life, I can say, what I remember is that I have a good life. I didn't remember to be hungry because, and I don't remember difficulties in Israel, economical difficulties, because we are under the wings of the parents, and they try to do the best for the kids. The most important thing for the parents at this time was that the kids will feel good and wouldn't suffer anything that can make them sad.
And I think that what the most important thing for them was your education.
Okay.
They stressed that they wanted their children to be educated, and they did their best to send them to schools and to make sure that they study well. And I remember how his mother was proud of him when he got his first degree. That was, I think, the happiest
Picture, you have to show it.
the happiest day in her life, when he got the first degree.
And Dov, did you grow up in a religious home?
It's very interesting. When we arrived, the government, as we can say, was ruled by Mapai, the Labour Party, and they tried to put as many children to non-religious schools. And so they didn't ask many questions. The people didn't know, newcomers. So when I arrived, I was sent to a school at the first grade. I was sent to
a secular
school, and I remember the school, and I have even a friend that I keep connection with him up to date. And the Jewish story is a very strange story.
Finish first the story about the secular school.
It's a very strange story. The child that I sat next to him in the first class in the secular school, was older than me. I was very young. So, and we were very good friends. Later on, after he finished his studies in the Technion, he became a Chabadnik.
Wow.
And today he is a Chabadnik, he lives in Chabad, and when he is coming to me as a religious man to eat, he says, no, I have my kosher food. So you don't know how things are going on.
He lives in Kfar Chabad?
Yes.
Yeah, he's living in Kfar Chabad. Very interesting guy.
And your parents, were they very traditional?
No. They were traditional, but not very. And they went to shul, but I don't remember my father putting tefillin every day. I don't remember this.
What is interesting, he was in that secular school for 6 months. And then his parents understood that Jewish schools are not all frum, that some of them are secular. So he moved to another, they asked him to go to another school, and all his life he was in an Orthodox school, except for the first 6 months. Because in the beginning they didn't understand that there are different schools. It was a Jewish state, so they thought all the Jewish schools are the same.
Because I learned it in the camp in Austria, about 5 years I was old. So when I came here, I was more in a much more better place than the other kids. They didn't know anything about Hebrew and not to read and not to write. So they took me from the first class to the second class. So I was all the years I was the youngest student in the school. I finished secondary school about before 17. So I came to the religious school, and what's interesting in Haifa in those days, you have the downtown, you have the what's it called, the middle town, and you have the upper side, the Carmel. And in Haifa it is that on the Carmel were the people who arrived before the war, more wealthy people, and in the Adar, the middle, were also people who arrived before the war, but less well-doing. And in the downtown lived all the people who came from the camps or from Muslim countries. So the school that I went up to the 8th grade was a school that all the children were all children of her parents were from camps or Muslim countries, and there were very little people, there were no students from the middle Haifa or the upper Haifa. And so if you look at the picture of the students that learned in this school, you will find out that it was called Yavne. Many schools are in the religious life are called Yavne, because Yavne and her scholars from the time after the ruining of the Second Temple. So we were separated. We lived separated. Those who came, the newcomers, and those who came before the war, till the age of 1955, the government decided to integrate the school, the down school, with the school of Hadar, and this was the first time that Jews from Hadar met Jews from the downtown. The first time. So
אני אספר את זה.
מה זה?
עוד מעט תספר את זה, שחזרנו.
אז so I was with the students, but I was a good student, so I have no problem to be with them. The people who came from the downtowns were less good students, let's say. And then I managed to join the Bnei Akiva. And I can say that this year, 1955, changed my life, because I started to be in Bnei Akiva, and the youth movement had a very big influence on me. So I studied, and after the school, they finished the 8th school. What's interesting, most of the students who came from downtown went to work. Few of those from Hadar went to work, very few. Although I was from the downtown, my mother made any effort that I will continue in the school, in the higher school. So I was, I think, from very few students that came from downtown who studied in
high school.
In high school, because first of all it was expensive. I think I didn't work, so I couldn't help them to work. What is interesting that I remember myself that I was at the grade of the 5th grade. I started to give private lessons to children who came from the camps, and I know, so I told them to read and to write, and what they are learning at school, I told them, and I got paid for it. So I can say I have always money. When the people from the students went from Bnei Akiva to the camps, youth camps,
to the summer camps,
I worked. I worked as a teacher with these kids. So I have my diary, and I start in the morning, and I gave lessons, hour after hour. I don't know if I helped my parents, but I managed to get some money from this. I started at the age of 5th grade to give lessons, and most of our activities at this time were, up till I came to the youth movement of Bnei Akiva, were on the street, because there was no place to play at home. So most of the time we played at the street. We found it all kinds of plays, and we enjoyed ourselves as kids. And we go to movies, and we played all kinds of cowboys films that we saw in the movies, and there's all kinds of plays that were at this time. But it was a good time. I didn't feel anything that bothered me. And after I joined the youth movement, I gave a lot of time to the youth movement even more than the learning at the high school.
So Dov, I'd like to ask you, did your parents, were most of their friends also survivors?
Yeah.
And
Their parents, their friends spoke Yiddish. So the Landsmannschaft was Yiddish speakers. And it's interesting that even when they met, one of the things that they decided not to talk about is about the war. They didn't talk about the war. And if there was someone who mentioned the war, they were angry with him. And they tried to make their company as much easier and not to mention things that can bother them.
did you ever feel growing up that you were a survivor, that
No.
you were...
I never felt that I was a survivor. From the beginning, I learned, I told you that I learned wrestling at the age of 4, 5. I didn't feel, never. I was mingling with the students, and I was even a sort of leader, but I am not a leader to go to the front and to make noise. But I felt very good in society.
Did you ever ask your parents about the war, or did it...
I didn't ask anything.
Did you feel you couldn't?
No, I felt that I didn't want to make them angry. And I know...
Or to upset them?
To upset them. I know that they didn't want to talk about it, and I appreciate what they want. So I finished at 1959, I finished the higher school at the age before 17, and then I wanted to go to the university. So I enrolled to the university to study, it's interesting, Arabic and philosophy. And I was accepted by the university. But I didn't have the money to keep myself here as a student. There was someone from the family of Eisen, that they have a hotel here in Jerusalem. They were rich people, and I suggested them that I will work at the hotel. I was 17, I said 17. I work at the hotel, have a living in the hotel, and food, and I will work. And unfortunately, I don't know how things are developing. The old lady of the hotel told me that that I have to go back home and to work and to help the parents and not to go to study philosophy. So when she went to rest, I left her a note that I thank her for her advice, and I left Jerusalem. And I didn't learn in Jerusalem as a student, but I enrolled myself to this teacher seminar in Haifa.
A teacher's college.
A teacher college in Haifa, because then I can go on living in Haifa with the parents, one room with the parents, and study in this seminar. Even the payment for enrolling, I took a loan to pay it. And later I found out the way to pay it. So I finished the seminar at 61, after 2 years of learning. In the Bnei Akiva, I was known all the time as the youngest guy. When I finished the seminar, and I joined the Nachal, it's youth movement that's going,
You joined the army.
I joined the army. In Nachal they combine agricultural work and the army work. It's called Nachal. Noar Chalutzi, Lochem. It means youth,
Pioneer youth fighting.
So I have two tribes, let's say. One that I was all the years when I was at the high school, then I was a youngster, and when I came to join those after 2 years that I studied, and they finished only the higher school, I was called the old man. So I was the old man.
And Dov, can I ask you, because I think this was a turning point with the Ahmed trial.
What?
When the Ahmed trial was proceeding, the Ahmed trial,
yeah.
I think a lot of people started to speak, or
Not really in
your house.
No.
Were you aware of the Ahmed trial?
Yeah, sure. I was. Well, sure we were. We heard in radio and we read. I read a lot. One of the things that I can say all the years that I read a lot. All kind of subjects. I used, because I didn't have enough time at home, I used to sit a lot in the library as a child. In the elementary school, I was in the library.
And Dov, I want to ask, with your mother, did she used to light candles on Shabbos? Did you?
Yeah, sure.
And
Now they kept Shabbos.
So she always.
They observed.
They observed. We observed kosher and Shabbos and all the
And
holidays.
she never lost her emunah when
No.
she went through the Shoah losing her husband. And
She was born in Berdychiv, and I think that the Hasidic life influenced her so much that my name is Dov Ber, and I think it's said after the Dov Ber from Mezerich, one of the most famous students of the Baal Shem Tov. Dov Ber was very famous because he was a teacher of, and he spread the Chabad in Eastern Europe. He did it, Dov Ber. And he sent the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, he sent him to Lubavitch because he was a philosopher, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he wanted him to be
a good rival to the
Misnagdim, Litvaks. But the Berdychiv Rebbe was also one of the students. So the Berdychiv Rebbe was for many years in Berdychiv, and I know that the people were Hasidim. And they have their way of living, and my mother was kept, when she, I think even in the camp all the years, there was also a traditional, was an observer. So there was no problem. I remember myself all the time observing the Shabbat and the holidays and Kashrut, all the days.
And when did you meet your beautiful wife, Lily?
Okay. She will tell it.
Lily, how did you meet her?
It's a good story. When I was 16, I was in Bnei Akiva. And we had some problem in our club. And people didn't know how to solve this problem. I told them, look, I'm going to help you. I'll go to the man who is in charge of our club. He's called Dov Eisen. He is in a settlement on the Egyptian border. He's there with my sister. I knew about it because my sister was with him in the army, in the Nachal. And I told him, look, I'll go south. I'll meet him. I'll speak to him. I will explain to him what the problem is. And he will solve it for us. Fine. So I went all the way. It took about a day to go to the south in those days. It was on the Egyptian border. And I lived at the time in Kfar Saba. So it was, we had to go to Beersheba and there to take a lorry that went from one settlement to another until in the evening it reached the place where he was. I came there almost at night and I was looking for him and I said, may I speak here to Dov Eisen? I know he's the man who can solve our problem. I met him, I explained. He couldn't solve the problem, but it was our first meeting and it was a crucial meeting because he saw a young girl at the age of 16 who can explain and introduce problems so well. So we became very close friends, and in those days people used to correspond. So we corresponded for 4 years. And when I went to the university, I met him again. And there, it was the last time we separated. Because we got very close, and during the first year at the university, we got married.
And can I ask...
תעצור רגע.
What do you want to show
אתה רוצה
here?
לעצור רגע? יש כאן...
Lily, could I just ask you, the problem, is it possible to mention what the problem
Well,
was?
no, I don't want
No,
to.
okay.
I don't want to. Because it was a problem that has to do with some people, and I don't want to
but-
mention it.
And was it ever solved, that problem?
It was solved naturally because the time passed by and the people who caused this problem had to leave
Okay.
naturally, and it was solved.
So, and you've been married, Ken and Hora?
We are married for 56 years.
Ken and Hora, it's amazing. I just want to ask Dov and Lily, you decided to go back to your roots, to...
Berdychiv.
yeah.
רגע, חכה. אני חושב שיש כאן כמה תמונות שכדאי לך לצלם.
Okay, before we discuss you going back
Yes,
to
yes.
Berdychiv...
לא, אני רוצה עוד
Berdychiv,
לספר לך משהו עוד לפני כן. אתה רואה כאן, נילי מצאה בעיתונות.
אני אסביר את זה. I will explain.
לא, אבל צריך לראות, לא, איך זה מתחבר.
I will explain. I will explain.
אבל תחברי את זה לסיפור.
I want to say that years later, when Dov was 70, we started to get more information about his past. I would say that for 70 years we didn't deal. He didn't consider himself a Holocaust survivor, and his parents never told him the story, so we knew very little. But at the age of 70, we started to do some research. And the first thing we found was the picture of the sheep Teti. This is the sheep with which he came to Israel. And we found also in the newspaper some information about the newcomers in those days. Every day they wrote in the newspapers how many newcomers came to Eretz Israel. Today they give the weather broadcast. But in those days, every day they mentioned the number of people coming to Eretz Israel. It was so important. And we found that when his ship arrived in Israel, it was Shabbat. And it was not the only ship. 3 ships came on Shabbat, and there were 1,010 newcomers on these 3 ships. And the rabbinate, the chief rabbi, said that people can debark, you say? Disembark the ship on Shabbat, because coming to Israel is so important. So they say here, Aliyah Israel docha Shabbat v'chag. It means you can come to, the newcomers, the refugees can come on Shabbat and will be treated, they won't stay on the ship and wait for Sunday, because coming to Israel is so important. So in those days, Aliyah was one of the most important things. Here, on Rosh Hashanah, when they showed the cartoon, they showed that this year, it is the year of newcomers coming to Israel. That this is the most important thing in the history of the country of Israel.
And what was the name of the ship?
Teti. And this is the ship.
What's important is Teti was a ship that was traveling in the Mediterranean, and your parents came.
No.
I knew people who came on Teti, so most of them came from Trieste.
Right.
What I want to tell is...
Maybe we want to tell about going back to Berdychiv.
I want to raise this, תוציא את המסמך של מחנה. What's important about it, after the war, you could imagine that the people who survived the war will all of them go to Israel to say we had enough from the Gentiles, we want our country to be among Jews. So what I found out, looking at the documents of the camp that I was in, a very strange picture. Most of the Jews, most of them didn't go to Israel. At this day that we went on the ship, I found out, you can see it, that they show how many Jews left the camp and where were they going. Many of them to America, to Australia, to South Africa. To Israel went only 15 people. And hundreds, when people don't believe it, but I say here it's written by the joint from the day when they left. 15 people left to Israel. We were 4. My parents and me and my sister. And here you see hundreds of people are going not to Israel. And it's very strange, the history of the Jews and the way they are thinking about themselves as a nation. And they wanted to continue their lives, and they didn't went to Israel, and this is something that it's difficult to understand, because there was no such opportunity for so many years to go to a Jewish state. And you say you are praying for the Mashiach, Shana Haba b'Yerushalayim, Israel, you say Yerushalayim Meros Simchatenu, all the words, you know.
In the middle, every day, in the middle.
Yeah, you say it more. And you say it also in the Birkat Hamazon, you say it a lot. And also, Afapichet, they left not to Israel. And I am very astonished by it. It surprised me again and again why the Jews prefer to be where they are, although they have their nation. So this brought me later on at my work to work with the diaspora. So you wanted to ask about Berdychiv?
When did you first return?
רגע, חכה, אחר כך תמחק את זה. I want to show you after that when I was in the seminar, I went to study biology, and I didn't know anything about biology because I was at the religious school. They didn't touch much. So I told them that I want to learn something new, and they accepted me, although I didn't learn enough to be in a biological. איפה התמונה עם מאיר? פה, בטח. You see, this I love to walk in the nature. So I made many trips, even by myself and with friends, in the nature. I felt very good. So I finished the seminar, I went to the army, to the Nahal, and later on I went for about a year to Yeshiva, Merkaz Arab. I wanted to study. What's important is you don't know how things are changing in life. When I was at the high school, at the age of 17, I tried to go to the army school, פנימייה צבאית. There is a army dormitory that prepares people to be officers. And they made this 2 last years of the higher school in this dormitory and study all kinds of military studies. And when they finish it, they straight go to the officer training. So I wanted to be an officer. But we went 3 guys, we went there. I have connection with them up today. And I wasn't accepted because I had glasses and they didn't want me to accept me. So I continued in the higher school. You don't know how things are going on. Later I go to the seminar and I study biology, not Arabic and not philosophy. After the seminar I wanted to go to be a sailor. I wanted to see the world. But my father wasn't was ill, so I left the idea to be a sailor. Later when I came to the yeshiva, I say, I am not a sailor in the sea, but I am now a sailor in the Gemara. And I was about a year in the yeshiva, and I was invited to be responsible of students in the higher school in the Midrashia in Pardes Chana. So it's
A tutor.
A
You were
tutor.
some kind of a
You were in Merkaz Arav.
I was from the Merkaz Arav. They heard about me.
And they invited him to work at the Midrashiat Noam. Midrashiat Noam in Pardes Chana was a yeshiva high school.
Very famous, with Arav Yogel and Sadan, very famous. They heard about me and they invited me. And I went there because it was good for me, because I was there in a dormitory. So I got a salary as a teacher, because I was after the seminar. And I got all what I needed to live. So I was in this place about a year and a half. And then I go to the university. And in the university, I didn't go not to Arabic and not to philosophy. I went to sociology and education. And you don't know how things are going on. And I finished education, the first degree, the second degree, and I worked in the Ministry of Education. And later I became the head of the Department of Teacher Training in Israel. And after several years, 15 years, of being the head of this department, I initiated a department in the Ministry of Education that was called the Department of Israel Diaspora Educational Relations. And I worked there also 15 years. So I enjoyed very much my living in Israel, and I enjoyed very much what I am doing and what I did. And now I enjoy very much my pension. And what helped me to enjoy all the time is my wife, that I helped to bring her up from the age of 16. I saw that she has a potential. And I accompanied the potential, and now I get the credits.
And then you also were involved in education.
Yes. Well, what I did is I studied languages. I studied English and French. And I thought I'll be an academic. But one day, a principal of a school met me and she said, I need an English teacher. I said, but I'm not a teacher. She said, you will be one. Please come to my school and give an example lesson and we'll see whether you can teach. So I came, and it was a vocational school. The girls who studied in this school came from underprivileged homes, and they were on a very low level. So when I came there, the principal told me, I don't expect you to teach them English. I just want you to keep the door closed so that they don't make noise while they have their English lessons. I felt so insulted when she told me this, and I was so sorry for the girls that she wouldn't trust them and she wouldn't believe that they can study. And I told her right away, I'm ready to be a teacher. And my mission was to show her and to show the world that these deprived girls can study and can overcome obstacles. And I did it for 3 years. And what helped me most was that Dov at the time studied education at the university. So whenever I came back home depressed or really sad about their low achievements, he would explain to me.
I was a tutor.
He was my tutor. He was explaining to me what was going on in my class. And after 3 months of teaching these girls, I told them, would you trust me and start from the beginning? I was wasting your time for 3 months, but now I think I know how to teach you. And they trusted me, and we started from the beginning. And after 3 years of studying, an inspector came to watch me in class. And she came, and she was surprised. These girls were reading English, were speaking English. And she said, I want you to come to the English inspectors and tell them what you are doing in your class. So at that time I didn't have a car, so she sent me a cab, a taxi that would take me to a meeting with the inspectors. On the way, an old professor joined us, and the two of us came to the same place where we had to give our lectures. He lectured in one room, I lectured in the other, but on the way he asked me, my young lady, what are you going to talk about? And I said, I'm going to talk about teaching English to underprivileged students according to the method of Professor Frankenstein. He said, that sounds very interesting. But we reached already the place, so he gave his lecture, I gave mine, but on the way back he told me, I don't think that anyone can teach English according to the method of Professor Frankenstein. And I was a young girl, a young woman, so I said, why not? I'm ready to explain to you. But we've already reached his home, so he said, you won't have time to explain, but I'm Professor Frankenstein. Wow. And I don't think you can do it. I said, but I can. So he said, please register to my seminar at the Hebrew University for second degree, and there we'll discuss the subject. And what happened is that I registered, I enrolled for the second degree, and we became very close friends. And I was his representative in teaching and explaining how one can teach English according to the methods of Professor Frankenstein.
You had no idea when you were in the college?
No, I didn't know it was him. I didn't know him. And I knew his method because my husband was his student. So he was teaching me his methods at home. And I was teaching for 30 years. And then I went to the Ministry of Education and I became a tutor at the Department for Gifted Children. And there I worked for another 10 years. And now I'm retired. And what I'm doing now is I'm very involved in many social projects. I'm at the management of Emunah in Jerusalem. I'm also involved in the community center in Beit Vagan. I'm working a lot on genealogy of my family and having about 14 grandchildren. It's also a job that I enjoy.
It's wonderful. And we're going to just complete the circle. What made you decide to go back to the roots, to the Shorashim?
רגע. את סיפרת כל כך הרבה you see, this is a picture where it's a downtown. You see the houses. We lived there. Those are the places that we went in.
Even today, when you go downtown in Haifa, you
there
can
are
see,
still some.
You can see the remnants, and you can see some of the houses that still exist. And it's very different to Middle and Upper Town.
Yes.
Very different.
Very different. Here you see what I told you, the students who are at the elementary school. Most of them are survivors, and most of them are from the Muslim countries.
From Morocco, Jews that
Morocco,
immigrants from
North Africa.
North Africa, yeah, Morocco especially. And then when I came to the higher school, you find out that most of those students went to work and they didn't go to
I
study.
think they had to help their families
They
to
helped them.
survive.
Support.
And I didn't do. This is what this old lady told me: go back and support your parents. So now, what made us to go back? You ask the question. תעשית את תמונות של ברדיצ'יב.
כן, הנה, אני מחזיקה.
First of all, were you nervous to go back, or were you excited to go?
It came when we were all in the pension, retired. We went to a course in Beit HaTfutzot. Today it's called ANO, and there was a course about the places that memories from the past, places where your family is, and we joined such a course that spoke about Jews in Poland and Ukraine. This course was done together with the Ministry of Culture of Poland. So it was an Israeli and Polish project. So we learned for a while, once a week, and at the end we went to Poland and to Ukraine, and we passed what happened with the Jews, a little before, and a lot of in the time of the war. So I arrived to Berdychiv with this group, and we heard what is the story. And after a while, I wanted to go back to Berdychiv and stay there for a week, and to walk in the streets of the family, to see who was where. I read about the place. So we decided to go, and we found out a Chabad home, that he has a room in the shul of Chabad in Berdychiv. So we get this room, and we stayed there for a week, and we went across the city, and we saw the bridges that my mother mentioned, and we saw the people, some Jews who still are living in Berdychiv, were living in Berdychiv.
What year did you go back?
What year was it? באיזה שנה חזרנו?
מה, כתוב שם בזה?
2012.
2012.
Yes,
זה פעם שנייה.
For the
2012.
second time.
Yes.
And the original houses still existed?
No.
No, we didn't know the houses, but what we did, we asked him to take us to the mass graves, because we knew that 30,000 Jews were killed in Berdychiv in 3 weeks, in June 1941. So he took us to the fields, and he said that the mass graves were found in these fields. And then they put these tombstones, these monuments, to mention that 30,000 Jews were killed, were murdered in this place. And each of these monuments tells the number of people that were killed and buried in mass graves. Here you can see the number is 18,640 in one mass grave.
And they were all shot. They were
all shot.
This is
And
the
this
Holocaust by bullets.
Yes, and this is very interesting. He took us to a place where 960 children were buried. What happened? These children were kept in the monastery, and the people in the monastery wanted to protect them. But a man who joined forces with the Germans came.
Ukraine.
He's from the Ukraine. He told the Germans that 960 Jewish children were in the monastery, and they got them out, and they were all shot and buried in this place. And this is the monument that was put for these 960 Jewish children that were shot in one day.
Does it say anything about being Jewish on the...
It says, here it's written in Russian, so I don't know, but the men from Chabad who took us to the place told us that they were all Jewish children.
So if your parents wouldn't have left when they left,
they would have been in this mass graves. Yes. That's what we understood. She never said it. His mother never mentioned the word death or killing or anything. Never. But when we went to Berdychiv, we started to understand what happened in this town and what was the fate of the Jews who stayed behind. But they had no choice. She said that it was almost impossible to leave the town because the trains were full. You couldn't get in. Somehow she managed, but she said it was almost impossible. So you cannot blame the people for not escaping because they couldn't escape.
And is there any remnants of the ghetto or anything, the shul, the synagogue?
Yes, there are shuls in Berdychiv. They are empty today because there are almost no Jews in
These are the original
Berdychiv.
shuls?
Yes, but the original shuls still exist.
And
Dov, please come here.
זה 2012, זה החיוב שלנו.
I said 2012.
כן.
Yes.
So Dov and Nidhi, I'd like to ask you both, being Dov, and you are a survivor, did you speak to your children a lot about being a survivor or what you went through?
I told them what I know. I didn't know much, but I encouraged them to learn about the Holocaust. I encourage them, and when there are the days of remembrance, we speak about it. But I have my story is more a story of a survivor than the story of a sufferer. And my way that I was accepted, I grew up in Israel, was not as a survivor, but as someone who came to his country and is happy to be here, and he is also trying to convince others that the place for the Jewish nation is Israel. Not only because of the religion point of view, because this is what we learned in the Testament, but also because you can look at it, religious and secular, this is the state of the Jews. So our home is very Zionist.
So I always do try and ask, what message do you impart to what message do you give to your children, grandchildren, and to the future generations? In a way, I think you've already answered, but is there anything else that you would like to give over for the future generations? Advice or message?
They have to do all that they can in order to develop the country and in order to develop the culture of the country, because what we succeeded till now is to have the land, but now we have very difficult questions about what sort country it will be, what the spiritual questions. So what I try with my children to do is to speak that it's not only important to have the land, we have to build up also the spirit, because we want a Jewish nation, and to be a Jewish nation it has to have the way of living of the Jews as it was for many years. I don't speak about the ultra-Orthodox, because we believe that you have to be religion and develop and to work and to develop the country in all the fields that the country need. You have to go to the army and you have to do the best for your country, for your family, and for yourself. But you have to remember that for us there is no better place to be in than Israel. This is what I'm telling them.
So Dov and Nili, I just want to thank you. You both. I've waited a long time, and we have, my wife and I, we are blessed. We really are blessed to have the most incredible friends, dearest friends, and I'm so grateful to you, Dov, and to you, Nili, for not only an amazing friendship, but you both are such examples that every single person should strive to emulate. Because you not only do you as educators, but you live what you teach. You live it, and you, by your example, it is incredible. And what your mother did and what she went through, and your father, it is unbelievable. Miracles upon miracles. To have survived in the Ural and to survive in Tashkent. So many people didn't survive, and the trials and tribulations, it's incredible. So it's just miracles, and we are so grateful, and you should both only know Mazel Brocha and good health.
Thank you so
much.
And
continue doing the most amazing and important vital work that you both do. And through your example, really, we are blessed to have you, and you should just continue being healthy and have mazel and brocha and all of Hashem's blessings.
Thank you.
I want to say another miracle is that we met Dr. Glassman and his wife, and this is a story for itself. Maybe that if you have patience to see it, you will see how we came to know the Glassman family for so many years, and we are blessed that we know them and that we keep the connection. I admire Dr. Glassman for all his efforts to keep the history of the Jewish nation, and he find out for him as something very important to do, especially for the Jewish nation and also for the non-Jew, to see how the Jewish nation is making all the efforts and struggling for developing the Jewish nation, and to say Am Israel Chai, and we shall continue to do the best for the Jewish nation and for the world.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Dr. Glassman.
Thank you, Dov and Nili. Thank you so much.
I was the head of teacher training department in the Ministry of Education, and after 15 years I decided to do something new, and I initiated to build up a department for Jewish diaspora education relations. So this is a picture of the principles of the teacher training colleges, and here I retired, they planted trees for me, and here this is put in honor for my work in it's called the Golden Book of Keren HaKayemet. And here what I am proud is that after 20 years they asked me to bring them together, and we made a meeting at our home with all the people who their colleges got the BED, the Bachelor of Education.
And this is from the Druze?
This I got from the Arabic college in order of my work together with them. I was with very good relations with Arabic and with the Druze teachers in the Golan. So this is, they gave it to me. And this is I'm proud of.
And this is from Maccabi.
This is for Maccabi. Or later, I tell you, this is another job. This I'm proud of. We initiated to plant a forest for the teacher colleges. And here you see, before we have the trees. This was only the idea that here we are going to plant the trees, and here you see that they started to plant. And what I am very proud to show, that after years we got the trees, and the grandchildren walked among the trees.
And now it's a proper forest.
It's a forest. It's near Neve Ilan, near Jerusalem.
And now everybody can enjoy it.
Everyone can come there and enjoy it. And this is a way that I try to say this is our heritage. Build up Israel.
So really, it's amazing.
And this is when I worked in the Department of Israel Diaspora Educational Relations. One of the tasks was the Maccabi. It's a wonderful organization that is doing a lot for Jews in Israel and diaspora. Very important organization that is dealing with sport, but not only with sport. And this is one of the pictures I got when there was a Maccabiya in Jerusalem.
Tov, it's incredible. Thank you so much.
I made a family tree, and this family tree is telling the history of the Jewish people. At the end of the 19th century or the beginning of the 20th century, some of my relatives went to the States. They went to the Golden Medina and they stayed there. They built families. Most of the families stayed in Poland. My father was a Zionist and he went to Israel. And when you look at our family tree, you can see the Jewish history. Those who went to the States after 100 years, none of them is Jewish. They were all married out. And we don't have any contact with them anymore. Those who stayed in Poland were all murdered by the Nazis. And only my father's family, he's the only person who is alive from his whole family. They were 8 brothers and sisters. 7 of them were murdered with their children. And when you look at the tree, you can see all the branches in the States are cut down. All the branches in Poland are cut down. And only one tree is still flourishing and blooming. It's the one who has roots in Israel. And this is what I tell my children. If you stay here in the land of Israel, you will grow, you will thrive, and your children, your grandchildren and great-grandchildren will bring more and more people to the Jewish people. And those who left don't exist anymore. So we should keep the tradition of the Jewish people and of our family and stay here in this land of Israel, that after 2,000 years we had the privilege of living here. My father lived to be 100, and this photograph was taken when we celebrated his 100th birthday. Here is my father, and I'm sitting next to him. Here is my brother, and here is my sister. And this is the family when he was 100. Today, there are many more great-grandchildren and fifth generation. There are more and more children. We probably reach the number of almost 100 siblings. But you can see that those who stayed in Israel, they are the ones who carry the tradition of the family and
סבתות היום.
continue the chain.
יפה.
This is our family. Here you can see me and Dov. We are celebrating here 50 years of marriage. And these are our children and grandchildren. It was done 6 years ago. So today we have more grandchildren and even one great-grandson. We are proud of this family and we keep smiling.
We keep smiling.